Hello and welcome to Stream Theory. I am Jackson from the YouTube channel Skip Intro and the Skip Intro extended media universe that I just it's just the YouTube channel, but I thought I'd just say that anyways because it sounds more official. And on the line we have Thomas Flight of the Thomas Flight extended universe.
Cinematic universe.
The cinematic universe. Yes. How is your innie today? Thomas Flight.
I don't know about my innie, but my Audi watches many wonderful television shows. And
okay, cool. My innie is the one who's watching all the TV shows.
Oh,
so.
right, yeah. my innie. I guess my innie has many meaningful discussions about television shows with his peers. I don't know what. I don't think I have an Audi. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the problem.
Herein lies the problem.
For those of you who don't have any idea what we're talking about Apple TV Plus's original series Severance, which is very good. I think we're in agreement about that.
Yes.
It's one of the best new shows of the year. Probably going to be in contention for one of the best shows of the year, in my opinion. It is about a office where you can get a procedure done where your brain is split between your innie and your outie, so that when you go to work, you have no memory of the outside world, and when you leave work, you have no memory of the work world. So you step into your office, and your next memory is just you coming out of the office.
Yeah.
Or conversely, if you're an innie, your first memory is walking in, and then your last memory is walking out, but you never leave. So you just keep cycling in and out.
The characters literally like go on this elevator to leave work, and their like consciousness blinks out basically for that version of themselves that is the at work version, and then their next memory is them on the elevator coming back down and going to work. So they never even sleep. They just experience life as this unbroken sequence of being in this windowless office with no knowledge of the outside world, working until they die or retire or get fired or something.
Yeah, not relatable at all for any of us, I bet. It's a great show. We've been talking about how much we want to talk about it, but we haven't actually really sat down and talked about it much at all. This first season just ended on April 8th, last Friday, I believe, at the time of recording this, and it's got renewed for a second season. And I don't know. Where do you want to start talking about this? Because there is a lot of stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover here. I think we're probably just going to do this scatterbrained survey of like the entire first season. But maybe before we get into like the nitty gritties, if people are watching this who haven't seen the show or don't want spoilers, maybe we can talk for a little while about like why we think it's great, or maybe pitch why people should watch it without spoiling it, and then we can move into like spoiler territory.
Yeah. I think that the thing that really stands out when you first watch the show is it looks great. It's like really well, the art design and the way that the entire world is laid out is really interesting, and I feel like it grabs you pretty immediately. They work in this office that's like simultaneously obviously pretty futuristic, because we're talking about brain chip implants, but also all of the computers are like super old, and
the cars are even old. It's kind of like, it's almost like a 90s futurism kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
Aesthetic.
It is very. That's a good point. And the way everyone is dressed is very, I would say, very similarly like, it almost feels like a 70s.
Yeah,
70s
it's maybe
or
more
80s.
70s than 90s. It reminded me of what was that Netflix original, also kind of about weird surrealist work.
Oh, with directed by Cary Fukunaga.
Yes.
What was that called? And Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
You look that up. And yeah, so the I think that for me, I like all of that stuff too, but the thing that really stood out to me, the thing that, if you're familiar with my YouTube channel, the thing I really liked was all the show's commentary on capitalism, and the way that it kind of just like lays out how I don't know, like the actual like theories. When you saw the first episode before I did, and you messaged me and you were like, Severance might be a wild Marxist show, a Marxist show in the wild. So I think that's pretty apt, to be honest. I feel like everything that they're touching on is all about like Marx's critiques of like alienation, people being alienated from their work, the way that you are exploiting someone, and you just put them out of sight, out of mind, and you're just like, you literally are just, your entire life is these outies, their entire lives are subsidized by the innies' work, and they don't have to think about them. They don't even consider them like full people. They don't think about them at all. They don't know anything about them. So I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're doing great down there.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything's awesome. I keep coming home with these random injuries, but
right.
they told me that I just dropped a box on my head.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it explores all of that, and it does so in a way that's very like it does so in a way that's very immediate and visceral, and like really taps into the feelings of like that disconnection and alienation. Like there's some of that symbolism and like exploration of that like metaphorical territory is like enough on the nose that I think it's very clear, but it's not like it's not. It doesn't. It's a good show even beyond that, I would say. Like, it's not just good in its exploration of, theory. It's also just like an engaging story. There's people I've talked to about it. After a couple episodes, I was like, I'm fascinated by the metaphor here of blah blah blah, and they were
like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of that.
I was just like watching this as a thriller, kind of like weird sci-fi type thing. And I think, it functions at both levels. It kind of like Westworld in that way, where it's like, Westworld is this exploration of like consciousness and what it means to be a person and alive and all these things. But it's also like, at least the first season is like a good show that's exciting and it's sci-fi, and
that's debatable about that first season. But I've heard people describe it. Maniac, yes, thank you. I knew it started with an M.
Yeah,
I wanted to say mindfuck, but I knew that's not what it was. I've heard people describe Severance as The Office meets Lost. I've also heard it probably more accurately described as Anti-Work meets Lost, which I feel like is definitely accurate. There's a lot of Lost vibes. I feel like a lot of people are talking about that. I think that's what you're touching on with the Westworld comparison, where it's like, what's going on? What is this company even doing? That's something that these characters can't ever seem to
figure out.
We're never told what it is. They start sorting. So our main characters are data refiners, and they take a bunch of numbers on a screen and they sort them into bins based on how they make them feel.
Yeah. Some of the numbers are scary, and
which sounds ridiculous,
right.
But they do a good job of like making you feel like they feel it.
Right.
So like, it seems like it's a real thing. I don't know what that means, how that works. That's interesting. What does the company do? I don't know. There's some crazy like cult of personality stuff going on with the leader. There's the people who aren't severed who are managing them, and what are they up to? What's their whole game plan in this whole thing? What's going on with these characters? Like, when we get like peaks of their outside lives, the only character that we really see fully inside and outside is Adam Scott's character, Mark.
Yeah.
So everyone outside of him, we're kind of like, wait, what's their life really like on the outside? What's their deal? Who are they? There's a lot of mystery stuff going on.
It does a good job of kind of like, besides Adam Scott's character, as you mentioned, you're kind of mostly trapped within the experience of the innies, the people who are at work. And so as they're trying to kind of like figure out, what the situation is, you're going through that process with them, which I think makes it very fun and compelling. But yeah, the numbers thing, like so many things in this show, ends up being like, I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous on the face, but like at the same time, it's also just a beautiful analogy for sort of like what a lot of work is, which is like, I look at numbers. Some of them are good numbers. Some of them are bad numbers. And you do things with the numbers. It's like, that's work for some people. Like,
Yeah.
in a very in a very literal sense, if you strip away the meaning, behind those things, it's like I'm moving around numbers on a computer, and that's what I do all day. Like,
I feel like the whole show is kind of that kind of a metaphor for people who
Yes.
haven't seen it. Like it is that. It's also like very much like these characters are working for very small, like weird perks that they can get if they're like refiner of the quarter. One of the characters has like a bunch of finger traps, and sometimes they get like the pancake. Is it pancake party or waffle party?
waffle party, yeah.
Waffle party. How could I?
They throw
forget?
these bizarre, awkward parties, and it's very like,
It's just the four of them plus one other guy.
yeah, and but it's just very evocative of like the bizarre, strange ways in which like corporate culture tries to incentivize this like, loyalty or enjoyment or all these things. It's a really thorough examination of just the bizarre reality that is corporate culture.
I also love how even the people who aren't severed, like Patricia Arquette's character is the boss. She's also still like totally in the dark about people who are above her.
Yeah.
Like the board will sometimes talk to her through a proxy, and she can't even tell if they're listening or not.
Yeah.
And then it's like unclear if the person she's talking to is the person who's in charge or if there's someone above her. And yeah, so I really like how everyone is kind of it exists on like multiple levels. It's not just like this one person is the evil person who's, I mean, she's not a great person, but I don't think I'm going too out of line saying that.
You already alluded to this at the beginning, but like the way it's shot and the way the set is designed is really compelling. Like they're in this office, and the hallways are this like maze that they know how to get to some locations, and they kind of have, an understanding of like, oh, you walk down this like shapeless, formless white hallway and turn left and then right and then
that have
left
these
and
like
then
little
right.
nooks and crannies. Like they're not.
Yes.
They're not just like straight, like a grid system. Like it'll just like randomly just like over 3 feet and then keep going.
Yeah. And the show does a great job of like creating that disorienting feeling. Like when they're walking through the hallways, you never have a sense of like, oh yeah, this is where everything is. It's just like completely. I would go so far as to say, I think it's some of my favorite like use of set design in probably any show that I've watched, like just in terms of how big a role like the environment they're in plays in like being a part of the show and the metaphor and like all of these things.
Yeah, it's like very integral to everything they're trying to do, and I feel like it doesn't feel overused or anything. It's just like, I totally agree. The only other one I would say is like Atlanta or something, because Atlanta's very much about place. I was gonna say one of the scenes that really stands out to me in terms of like filmmaking is it's like the second episode, maybe the first episode, where a new character joins the office, Helly R, and she does not want to be there, and they're like, oh, you can leave, and she tries to go out the there's like a place where they let them go, where they're like, you can just walk out and you'll become unsevered. And every time she goes out, her Audi brings her back in. But it's shot from her perspective. So it's just every time she pushes open the door, it's also being pushed open to have her come back in. And it's like a really cool effect that they're doing. I think Ben Stiller directed most of the episodes. And I didn't know he could do this, to be honest.
They also use they also employ the coolest use of like a vertigo zoom that I've seen in a long time.
On every time they sever or unsever,
when they transition between the innie and the outie, it like they use a vertigo zoom to kind of morph their face in a way that signals what's happening very clearly. It's really just a very solidly put together show.
I wonder what the direction for the actors in those scenes is. It's like, shake your face and open your eyes again.
Kind of like, imagine you've just woken up.
Like, I wonder what it looks like when it's not, when we don't have the vertigo zoom, because it's always like very precise the way that they do it. Yeah, it's just, if it looks even remotely like you can tell what's going on or not. Do you want to talk a little bit spoilery?
Yeah,
spoiler territory.
Yeah, let's transition into. So if you haven't seen the show, we're gonna start diving into spoiler territory. I recommend you watch Severance. Go watch all. What are there? 10 episodes?
9.
And then come back and watch the rest of this afterwards.
Yeah, definitely bookmark this page.
Yeah.
Or if you're listening on a podcast, I don't know how you're listening to this.
Who knows how people watch things or listen to them.
It's definitely not our job to know.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I found so impressive about this is like the premise is really good, the setup is really good, and then like in episode 1 and 2, I had this feeling of like, okay, this is really cool, but how quickly is this going to run out of steam?
Right.
And then it never did. They just kept like peeling back these layers and adding these beautiful little like things to this whole world and this surrealistic metaphor about
I was having
work.
devs PTSD watching this, because I was like, I love the pilot, I love the concept, but shows like this, it's just hard to make shows like with a high concept like this and not like lose steam, because you just like so much of the pull is, okay, this is a really cool concept, I'm really into it, and then when you have to start doing like the hard TV work of like fleshing out characters and stuff, some shows just cannot do both. Yeah. And I think that this show does a great job. Like, I want to know all of these characters, what their lives are outside of this world. Yeah. Like, they're interesting as innies, but I also want to know, like, they do such a good job of making the characters feel true to themselves, both, like for Mark, both in and out. He feels like the same character, just in different circumstances.
Yeah.
And the same with Helly I feel like I understand at the end, spoilers, we learned who Helly really is, and she is a one of the Lumen Egan's, yes, thank you. She's one of the founding family members that has created this company, and she, like, it starts to make sense, like, why her Audi wouldn't let her leave, and also why she was so, like, stubbornly like, I will not be controlled. So like that felt perfect. Like, that felt like a perfect twist to some degree. Like, I guess it wasn't really a twist, but it was a twist.
It was one of those. It was a reveal, and it was definitely one of those well done reveals where, like, I didn't see it coming at all, but as soon as it happens, you're like, oh yeah, that
it all just clicks into place.
Makes sense.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense. Those are beautiful. I love when a show can do that.
The other big reveal that we got was that the therapist in Lumen that talks to the innies is Mark's wife, who he thinks is dead, but is clearly not dead, and we're not really sure what's going on with her. That reveal didn't work quite as well as the Helly one did for me, but it was still I didn't see it coming. I didn't see who's Mark's wife. I thought they did a great job of, like, not really showing us who she was in a way that didn't draw attention to itself. I wasn't like, oh, obviously this is going to be a reveal at some point. Until, like, the scene where they revealed it, and I was like, okay, this is what. And I thought it was going to be Helly, but it wasn't. So that was cool.
I think the significance of that reveal, I also felt kind of the same way. I was like, when that happened, I was like, oh, that's interesting. It had that vibe of, like, almost being too convenient, but then they develop it in a way, they don't quite go the full extent, but they kind of do this reveal where she gets that character who is an innie, who we see as an innie, but on the outside Mark thinks is dead, gets kind of put away back into storage, which is only mentioned once, like this lower level. And my theory is that she she died on the outside because as part of some experiment where they have people who are permanent innies or only.
Maybe.
And so I think that'll be developed further. I don't know if they like just are always innies or if they switch on and off or between. I think my theory is that Lumen's brilliant plan was if you can have all the time innies who just switch between like two jobs, then you're golden. You don't need.
Oh yeah, so she's just switching between being a therapist and like actually being a worker bee.
Right. She's essentially just a Lumen slave at that point that stays in the lower area and
okay.
And never leaves. She's still severed, but instead of being an innie and an outie, it's just flip-flopping between two innies.
I have no idea what they're doing with her.
I don't know if that's how it works, but there's something weird going on there.
I feel like you would just burn out at some point. Like they definitely show us John Turturro's character, whose name escapes me at the moment, but he's
having dreams.
Yeah, he's having dreams.
He's falling asleep, which you're not supposed to do.
Irving, is his name.
Yeah.
So he's definitely like tired on the outside. So I feel like you can, I don't know. It feels like you must be able to run into some issues in terms of human like just
right
physical limitations. But I don't know, maybe
they'd have to find a way to deal with sleep or something. I don't know. I just think there's a broader reveal to her character beyond just like she's not actually dead, or like I think
absolutely. Yeah.
Like there's something more going on there that we've yet to.
We have to understand. We still have to learn like why her death was faked.
Right.
It must have been faked at some point. We have to understand like what's going on with her. We also have to understand like what that storage like creepy place is, because Irving has been drawing it obsessively, I would say.
Yeah. Which I think he's having leakage because
are you having leakage right there?
I think I must be. My Audi hasn't been sleeping enough. I think he's having leakage because he's falling asleep.
So he's like dreaming,
and that's why they really don't want them to sleep at work.
Okay, I love that idea.
Because the dreams he was having too was like black ooze, like kind of coming through everything, which like kind of
that's all over the title sequence too.
Oh yeah. So never mind. That doesn't make sense. I was gonna say
that totally makes sense.
His painting.
But I think that it totally makes sense what you're talking about, because like the black ooze is in that that opening title sequence, and it's that whole opening title sequence also ends with Mark in bed next to his innie and his outie next to each other. So I think that there is definitely some element of sleep being the I think you're onto something there. I wanted to ask you about how you felt about the because to me one of the best scenes, the most interesting, most like intense scenes of the season was Helly are trying to attempt suicide, and just as like a fuck you to her outie, and the way that whole thing was shot, and how it was also broken up by episodes, which I thought was kind of interesting, because also that scene is being broken up by her transitioning into being a regular person and then transitioning like back. I don't know what you can probably speak better to like the filmmaking aspect of it, but it felt very, I don't know. I haven't felt like that intense about a scene on TV in a minute.
I mean, overall, I think the show does a great job of delivering those moments that I agree I haven't felt from TV in a while, where it's like when's, and it ends and you're like, immediately you're like, I need to see next week's episode. yeah, I don't have any specific thoughts about the filmmaking in that.
Yeah, I kind of just
it's
ambushed you with
all
that.
it's
so.
all like it's so well done and shot, and is I found the way all of that was done compelling. I think the most interesting thing to me about that stuff and a lot of what the show explores is that, like, we already touched on the fact that, it's kind of using this metaphor to like explore capitalism and work and alienation and all these things. But I think it like goes a little bit beyond that, and it's kind of just using the idea of like a separation in your mind to explore the kinds of things that we repress.
Yeah.
The subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and like the relationship between that. Some of the stuff, like, it feels as much a commentary on religion as it is
Yeah, I was going to talk about
capitalism.
that. Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's something you'll develop further in.
I think that is the central metaphor of the show, more than
Right.
just like, I don't like Mino like capitalism. I
Right,
think it's
yes.
more that capitalism is and people have written about this, but how capitalism is the de facto religion of the United States at this point.
Right.
Like, I think that they're talking about it in terms of, the way in which it's being like held up outside in the outside world, but certainly like Irving is talking about like the words of Kier all
Yeah.
the time, and like he's got like essentially a Bible.
Yeah.
They have that like crazy
Museum.
museum thing, but also the that's where he goes at the end of Neil, right? He goes at the or Dylan, sorry. Dylan goes at the end of the season when he gets his waffle party, and he is trying to break out, and they have some like crazy eyes wide shut
Yeah.
sex dance thing going on. I don't know what that was. They seem to be like, that's a thing that you can ask for.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know where that was on the menu, but it's like waffle party, finger traps, or masked orgy.
They do such a good job of like developing the weird, like, because like it's not necessarily the central premise that all these people are living in this office and their only knowledge of the innies only knowledge of the world is the office because they don't have any memories of going outside. Like, it's more about the relationship between the inside and outside, but they also explore this whole idea of like, well, if you did only ever live in an office and had no knowledge of the outside world, what would that be like? And so like people still have like, they have these theories about what goes on in the outside world. They have this pseudo religion that they follow, and there's this kind of culture that exists within that world as a result of like having no knowledge of the outside world. And the way in which they develop that, I think, is really well done. So what I was going to say about that, to the point about Helly's suicide attempt, is that like I think they explore that idea in the sense of like, I'm not a therapist or psychoanalyst. This is all very theoretical, but like I think there's a sense in which those kinds of things, when they manifest in people, a lot of times are like an attempt on some level to like communicate some deep discomfort, like to ourselves or to the outside world. And we like, you have no other option. Words have failed. You can't, you feel stuck and trapped in this place, and then you resort to, harming yourself or something as a means of like trying to break through some kind of barrier of communication. That's not all it is. That's a very reductive lens through which to view it. But I think that's an idea that the show is kind of exploring, is like all the different ways in which we like separate ourselves and say like, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to divide myself into two people and like, there might be pain in my life or things that I'm unable to deal with, and I'm going to try to separate myself, but then eventually like that part of you is going to come out in some kind of way. I don't know, I don't know if intentionally that's
Oh, I think that's definitely what they're going for, because Mark is he only joined Lumen in the first place and got severed because he was trying to repress or escape his feelings of grief over his wife.
Right.
Which, side note, is not how I would go about doing that, because now you've just gotten rid of a distraction, and now
Right,
you're
yeah.
just literally grieving 100% of the time. Like
Yeah.
the second you don't have any respite of work or anything, you are sad about your wife, then you go to work, and then you immediately come out and are like, man, my wife's still dead.
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds like not the solution I would go for personally.
I think it's pretty dark in the sense that like essentially what you're opting for is to be alive for a very short amount of time consciously, because you're like, you wake up, you have maybe,
Think about how much of their lives are sleep at this point.
Right. You go to work, you come home from work, you have a few hours, and then you go to sleep. But like also that's part of the metaphor is like
Right.
within a corporate capitalistic environment, like how much are we opting to just like not live, to be like
Most of his life is sleep or commuting.
right, yeah, and then you just have this, you go to this weird space, nothing that you do there matters to your outside life, you move numbers around on a computer, and then you come back and you're like, now I'm faced with my real life for like 2 hours or 4 hours or however long, and then I go to sleep and wake up and do it again.
One thing I really like is that I don't know where Lumen is located, but it's clearly someplace with like snow.
Yeah.
I just love how every time they leave, it's dark. Like it's always dark outside of work, because all of his daylight hours are spent at work. So his entire life becomes nocturnal.
Yeah.
And it's so depressing. It's. I moved further north. I just experienced the Seattle winter, and it's dark a lot of the time. Let me tell you. I wanted to say this might be I don't know. This might be one of those theories that's just I've been smoking too much weed or something.
This is a safe space. You can
Yeah.
you can hit me with your theories here.
But the thing about one thing I was just thinking about when you were talking about Helly's attempted suicide was, a lot of Christianity and a lot of religions kind of see suicide as like an affront to God, right? And in many ways, she is like doing it as an affront to her workplace by doing it there, and she's also doing it while rising up out of the basement into the sky. So I don't know, something there, I think. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No. Did you have?
Oh, I was just gonna pivot to one of my favorite things about the season, which was Mark's brother-in-law becoming the prophet of the innies.
Yeah.
Totally. I don't know. Like, I feel like the only people who he's like portrayed as such like a weirdo, like self-help, like
Dork. Yeah.
dork, and then they get their hands on it and they're like, this is the most profound thing I've ever read in my entire life, because I've never read anything else.
Yeah. No, it's definitely playing with that idea of like, if you're trapped within a certain system and you're just like starved for like anything, even the most banal like self-help stuff can just become this like profound like, oh wow, like yeah, it's kind of amazing. But they are definitely conflating like the way in which they frame Egan and Keir and like the book, like the manuals, and like all of this have very religious tones. Like Irving essentially treats it as this religion, and so they're conflating.
There's the myth making with the almost Renaissance like paintings.
Yes, yeah. There's like historical wars between departments that are maybe fabricated, maybe they actually happened. I don't know, but
they're certainly being told multiple different versions of reality. At the very least.
And so yeah, they're definitely like conflating God and work, perhaps again to illustrate what you talked about, which is like capitalism kind of, for some people, some cultures, kind of becomes this religion, and to question it or to fight against it is like tantamount to, like the classic Mark Fisher capitalist realist line is like, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. Like, in some ways, with capitalism, we're in a position that maybe people would have been in like 1,000 years ago with God, of like, you just wouldn't even like really think, at least in certain Western societies or whatever, you wouldn't even think to like question the existence of God. It would be like, which God do you believe in? Okay, yeah, whatever.
Right.
Or like how,
or you're really just debating what kinds of Christianity
right,
you want to be into.
What, we can have a debate about like, what is God actually like, but like the question of does he exist or not is just not even on the table. And
we're probably going to go to war over it.
Right, yeah. And culturally, that's kind of, in a lot of ways, the position we're in with capitalism. It's like, which flavor of capitalism do you prefer? Which is better? Like, what, all of these things. But questioning whether or not it's like a permanent part of our reality is like, that's kind of not on the table in some ways.
I love that. Yeah, I love that in the outside world, in that world where we're just kind of like, capitalism is just the status quo. We're not really thinking about it. It's kind of just in the background. Ricken's like self-help book is just like, wow, this is just so pie in the sky stupid. Yeah. But like once the innies are reading it and you like see their world and how tortured they are, like all of a sudden it doesn't feel like a stupid thing anymore. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, 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 that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Seize the means of production. I don't know. Like it almost is like depends on what your circumstances are. Like in a world where you're not experiencing any exploitation because you are exploiting your innie and you're not really having to deal with any of that stuff. It seems like, I don't know, unnecessary or whatever. And like Mark even like tries to like tell those protesters that who are protesting Lumen and Severance that they're like, they don't know what they're talking about and whatever. But once you actually are experiencing that, and I feel like the show puts us more in the mind of the innies than the outies. You're just like, yeah, no, that sounds great. Let's get rid of it. Let's do the thing. So, I just love all of the different ways that it's exploring this stuff and it never feels the show that it really reminded me at first of was Black Mirror, because it is this high concept. It is very dark, very futuristic sci-fi, but also like very understandable for our own given world. But it feels like way less preachy than that. Like we talked about like all of these metaphors that are there, but like you said at the beginning, you can totally watch this without having to think about any of those things, and just let them kind of like subliminally hit you. And it doesn't feel like they're saying technology is bad,
right?
Or let's not do this thing because it's social media is destroying our world or whatever else. They're just kind of like, this is the world we live in, and these are the things that we all do to feel normal. To
feel normal, and it doesn't at least to me. I mean, maybe to somebody who is like, the only person they follow on Twitter is Elon Musk, and they like all his tweets. Maybe they would watch this and be like,
so Elon Musk,
horrible propaganda, so maybe somebody who's less sympathetic to, I think, what the show is trying to do would feel like it's more propagandistic or something. But to me, watching it, it doesn't feel like propaganda. It doesn't feel like, it's just like trying to hit you over the head with an agenda. It's like, it's a good show. It's exploring psychology and and our world in a surreal way, and it has these characters in this science fiction kind of situation, and they have a very real like conflict and dilemma of like, how am I going to get out of this? How do we deal with this situation? And they are engaging with that circumstance in a way that feels very like true and realistic, and it doesn't feel like it's making this like crazy caricature out of things. I mean, it's a caricature of like a corporate world in a lot of ways, but it's less of. But I don't know. I guess that deserves to be
No,
caricatured.
I think you're right. Like the characters are really the reason that it doesn't feel preachy or I don't know, propagandistic, like you were saying. There's this article that Emily Vanderwerf wrote a while back that was like, why do second seasons suck, or something like that. And they were talking, or she was talking about, I want to say Westworld, but maybe something else. And it was like, these shows that are super high concept are really hard, like we were talking about earlier, because they start to run out of gas really fast. And that's the thing with like Black Mirror, is like, I can't really think, when you think about like an episode of Black Mirror, you're not thinking about the characters, you're thinking about the premise.
Yeah.
And the reason that this doesn't feel like it's got, I mean, it clearly has an agenda. I think everything that we just talked about is very intentional. I think that it is not a very sympathetic to capitalism show, but I think that the reason it doesn't feel like it's getting on its soapbox is because we're just rooted in the experience of these characters, and we relate to them more than we're like you wouldn't, when you explain the show, you're talking about you talk about the premise, but when you talk about like individual episodes, you're talking about characters. You're not talking about, oh, this is the one where they did the Defiant Jazz sing-along thing.
Right.
You're talking about like the experience of the characters, the emotions that they're rooted in, and that's like the hard stuff that you have to do in TV to keep an audience engaged, because the premise will wear thin if you just keep hammering it over and over again.
Yeah. It feels less like premise-y and agenda-y than even like Squid Game to me, which I think was even
absolutely.
more like this. Yeah, ironically, I think is actually doing a lot better job of like communicating the message it's trying to get across.
Well, you know that Squid Game was just a commentary on how communism sucks, right? Because they all wore the same clothes, and I mean, let's be real, because they were Asian. That was definitely part of the reason why it's about communism.
Yeah. I missed those details.
I'm kidding, of course, but there's a large section of people who basically
think that,
like, that said that. So
well, they can keep thinking that.
Like, this one is a lot less subtle. Like, it's not, or not even. I don't know. It's more subtle. It's more nuanced. Like, I would have thought watching Squid Game, it was hard.
Show, I think, to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's and that's part of the beauty, I think, of like both are shows that are metaphorical, but like I think like
this metaphor is less muddled for
this
sure.
one also has a sense of like surrealism / expressionism. Like there's this idea of like the show itself is engaging you more with like how it feels, like the feeling of like disconnecting yourself from your work, or the feeling of alienation, or the feeling of being like trapped in a work environment that you don't enjoy, that you want to get out of. Though like I think it's and it's doing that through like the way it's shot, through these horribly like banal party scenes that just like, I don't know, they make my skin crawl in the exact same way that like those kinds of functions and events.
I don't know. Milchick's got some dance moves, man. That guy can tear it up. You know what it reminded me of was the scene in Ex Machina, the dance scene.
Yes, yeah.
Where it's just like, we're just gonna pretend that this horrific thing isn't happening, and he's like, I don't know about you, I'm about to tear it up. Like, you're like, okay, I guess dancing solves I don't know. I've seen Footloose. It seems to solve a lot of problems.
It solves a lot of problems. That's
why they were against it. You know, that's why the cops are against dancing.
The show is kind of in that way, not with the dancing, but is leveling like a critique against like some of these ideas that I think are pervasive in our culture of like work-life balance. What's maybe some of the other ones like? Like we haven't talked yet about what do they call it? The sessions that they go to with the therapist. What do they call those sessions? Wellness sessions, yes.
Which I think is a very intentional title, in the way that we talk about wellness and mindfulness
and like I personally think all those things are great. Like the actual idea of work-life balance, it helps me. Like mindfulness, a lot of these things actually help me. But there's also this sense of like, are we corporatizing these techniques to like treat symptoms of a problematic work environment instead of dealing with like root issues? And the show is and the show is engaging with that of like, okay, the characters are feeling bad, and so we're going to send them off to a wellness session where we say these, meaningless platitudes and
my Audi
affirmations,
drinks lots of water,
to make them feel better about themselves, and then they go back to work and they feel refreshed and they feel great, and they don't try to off themselves in the elevator or rebel.
I mean, it also is very much like a confession, where it's like, you go there and we tell you that God loves you and that there's some imaginary person, unseen person very far away, that you have no real concept of, but don't worry, they love you very much, and that is all you need to survive. Which isn't bad. It's not bad that your Audi loves you, but it doesn't really help you not get tortured by Belgic. So,
which the way they do the break room and my air quotes, it is torture. It's psychological torture, but the way they do they present the torture that they experience when they've done something bad. They go to this break room, which is like down this really dank hallway that Irving furiously paints over and over again as an Audi. They go into this room and there's like this projector and they have to read this text over and over again, which is like basically an apology.
It's a confession.
And I just thought that was like,
and they have your hands on the something that like reads, it's like a polygraph, I guess. And he's like, you didn't mean it yet. And you have to keep doing it until you are like brainwashed into believing it. And even when the day is over, your day ends, or it doesn't really end because you don't get to experience that outside of life thing. Yeah. And you just return immediately. There's no break. Something that I think is really interesting, about the way that the show seems to be kind of opening up the world is this idea that there are other applications for severance, right? And work-life balance. Like how there's a character that we meet who was severed while she was pregnant, so she didn't have to like experience the unpleasantness of pregnancy. Yes. And she's obviously like part of like the upper class. She's like the wife of a senator or something. And it reminds me of how like we kind of see these technological like things that are going to allow us to have better work-life balance, like, or better work culture. Like you can work from home now, and that means that you can walk away from your computer whenever. And like in theory, it sounds great, but in reality, it just means that you're on call 24/7 and that you're getting Slack notifications at 11 p.m. or whatever, and you have to do this, and you're never like fully off. Yeah. And I thought that was like a really good metaphor for that without beating us over the head with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Great show.
Great show. I recently did a video about Atlanta and this concept of Afro-surrealism, which is a kind of type of surrealism. It's an art movement that explores you know what I'm talking about, but I'm saying for the people who haven't seen the video.
What? What is this?
Who are these people who are listening with us? It's not just you and me talking. It like uses surrealism to explore the experience of like marginalized people. And I interviewed D. Scott Miller, the author of the Afro-Surrealist Manifesto. And one of the things he talked about in the interview, I don't think I included this in the video, but he talks about how for him writing the manifesto, like Afro-Surrealism was also explicitly like an anti-capitalist like idea.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Severance is Afro surrealism, but I think there's a similar interplay in which it's using a surreal world, a surreal environment to kind of to investigate like what a lot of people feel is like probably experience as surreal in the real world of like, oh, like the alienation you experience in a corporate environment of doing all this work and feeling like it's meaningless and like feeling trapped there is a kind of surreal, absurd reality. And so to like accurately portray that, you kind of need this like surrealist world to do that. And I think we're seeing like more and more of that kind of, I love that we're kind of like seeing this resurgence of like expressionism or surrealism or like moving away from realism,
gritty realism
as a way to like examine our reality, because in a lot of ways like just showing things like quote unquote the way they are doesn't really like tap into how things feel a lot of times in our lives, I think. So I just say that like I think this show is also part of a broader like movement in television, in movies and things like that, of like going, especially television though, with things like Euphoria.
I was gonna bring up Euphoria,
like Atlanta, and this show aren't the only ones. There's others, but like shows that are like specifically moving away from strict realism as the main mode they're operating in.
Yeah, and even going back as far as like Mr. Robot or something like that, which is also very much in that vein. I think you're onto something, and I think that this is a really interesting show because it's also, while it's on the cutting edge of that movement, I think it's also probably the most explicit show in a movement that we've seen over the last like 2 years. You talked about Squid Game, Succession, certainly not super sympathetic to capital, I don't think. And there are a number of other shows that are escaping my mind, but those are, I feel like we're seeing a lot more of that in pretty mainstream TV right now, which is exciting.
We haven't talked at all about the irony that this is a show from Apple, which is the largest, like the aesthetic of Lumen as a corporation
is very Apple.
The outside, it's like so Apple, and I'm like
it's very Macintosh like too.
This is part of the wellness. Like these corporations create these pieces of entertainment for us to consume so that we feel like, yes, I can sit on my couch and watch on my corporate devices, my corporate produced anti-capitalist entertainment, and I can feel very good about myself, very good about my Audi, because my Audi is a revolutionary my Audi.
Yeah. Well, and also the deification of Steve Jobs is not just not unsimilar at all. Yeah, no, I think now you're sounding like Neil Postman. Like consuming any kind of anti-capitalist thing makes you.
I'm not saying
it's
you
Soma.
Can't.
It's just the revolution. You gotta only revolution. Entertainment is flawed as a medium. Period.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that
no.
Escaping the Matrix is not as easy as maybe it seems.
Look, dude, it wasn't easy in those movies either.
No, that's true.
If you saw Matrix Resurrections, it was not. That didn't seem to really happen. So
just when you think you're getting out, they pull you back in.
It's. I mean, this is why some philosophers have called capitalism the most. I believe someone said it was like the most authoritative form of government or form of society, because there's no way to escape it. Like, it just eats everything. That's not why people came here, was to hear me talk about how much I don't like capitalism.
But that trend though that you're talking about is very real, and I think like some of it's a generational thing. Like we're just to a certain degree, I think, opening back up to some of those ideas, and I think some of it is like in the last decade. I think it's become the downsides of certain aspects of capitalism, at the very least, have become a lot more visible to most people, where it's like there's a there's right now, for probably the first time in a long time, a like bipartisan in America, like even a bipartisan concern about big corporations, feeling like some of these corporations are just like way too powerful, and it's like we're at a place now where like
I was just listening to, or I just saw some guy on Twitter who's like running for Republican Senate, or like he's running as a Republican for the Senate seat in Arizona or something. He was like, these corporations think they're bigger than America. And I was like, yeah, dude, because first of all, they are. Like, Facebook has like 2 billion users. It's like bigger than Christianity. And and also like, yeah, because you guys are always deregulating them. Like, of course, this is like what happens. They become more powerful.
Yeah. I try to massage. I try to calm my fear. Massage
the medium.
Massage my fears with Ben Stoller. Is that his name?
Yeah, you love Ben Stoller.
Yeah, Ben Stoller's newsletter, Big, where he talks about how
it's not Ben Stoller, but
who is it? Big Stoller. Matt Stoller.
Okay.
Matt Stoller talks about how basically like the regulatory bodies in the U.S. have been that like the laws are in place. If you know the FTC wanted to wake up and be like, you must stop doing this, they could do that. It's like completely within their power. But like these agencies have just been asleep at the wheel for like 30 plus years. And there's even in this country has been a history of like much better, more comprehensive anti-monopoly regulation and things like that. And there's some suggestion that we might return to that, and if more and more people are like becoming aware of this idea and supportive. But I mean, then
this is the thing, right? Like, this is very top of mind because I'm finishing up this video called "Jon Stewart Doesn't Understand Capitalism," and he's always like, this is just like a fundamental misunderstanding. Is like, this is what happens with capitalism. Like, power and wealth just like reinforce each other over and over again. Like, Adam Smith called this out in like Wealth of Nations. He was like, yeah, no, people are just going to get more power with more money, and then they will write laws to get themselves more money. And like, there were some people in Congress who were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't sell stocks if we're in Congress anymore because, you know, these people are all doing super well trading stocks with all this insider information. And Nancy Pelosi was like, no, my husband is just a brilliant investor. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, like this is just what happens. Maybe there can be enough of a popular uprising like you're talking about that we
it's definitely open. It's definitely an open debate at this point. If like, can it be reformed? Can we still go like, oh, you know, we can use antitrust laws to like, you know, and there different people disagree. There's
it certainly could help. I can't see why I can't see why it would be bad.
It would be bad. Yeah. But it's not. There's a lot of people who would also feel like, well, that doesn't solve the whole problem, and we're still stuck with
the other show I was thinking of as class consciousness was The White Lotus, also part of this trend of anti-capitalism. I think maybe Succession would count, although it's a much more. I definitely count Succession.
It is for me, but you know, Succession's kind of like Fight Club in that I feel like it could go either way. Like, there's some people who could watch that. I don't know, like, they're so cringy. Like, who is watching Kendall Roy and is like, that's who I want to be. Right, yeah. Like, well, I mean, but that's how you feel. He's so uncool. He literally shit the bed. Like, he shit himself in the bed. Yeah, that's just what happens sometimes, you know. I guess, I mean, people like to deify When you're running a Logan company, Roy you don't have a lot of time. You know, you're a busy guy. You got to take the cocaine and the other drugs to like keep you going, and then sometimes you get a little whoopsie. It's just a part of the grind set. It's a part of the grind set that you need as a CEO. You know, I mean, people seem to be much more into Logan, but like they don't seem to maybe get that he's like the villain, but also like it's hard to be super sympathetic to a guy who just hates his own children and family. And
literally everything. He hates everything. But I guess maybe some people are so brainwashed that sounds good to them.
I don't know. I think if anything, some people get caught up in like, this is what happens. I would argue with like real life. Some people get so caught up in like the competition of it that they're like, you see this happen all the time where it's like, oh, we have 5 bad guys like fighting for something. You got to pick one of them to root for. It's like,
yeah,
you know, and so it's like we go like, oh, this is okay, this is fine, you know, whatever, because you got to pick a team. And it's like, well, but if all the teams are bad, like picking a team maybe is not a good option or a good thing.
Yeah, that's why sports are so big. Like you see all the same like conversation in America. Like Logan says, you got to be a killer, and like
right.
Everyone's like, LeBron, you got to be a killer. Like whatever else. It's all the same. It's all the same stuff.
Sports are bad. Watching TV is bad. Capitalism's bad. We should all go sit in the woods, and I would say be more mindful, but that's a tool that capitalism is using against us to keep us enslaved. So
you sound like Ralph Waldo Emerson at this point. You can be a transcendentalist. No, I mean, I don't think. I've run into this whenever I finish like one of my videos recently, like over the last like couple years. It's like, no, I don't think everything's bad. I just want to think about it when we're watching the thing, or like, because I feel like so much of it is, especially with TV, is so is not an active viewing experience. Like movies, I feel like are a little more active. Oftentimes, you like go into the theater, you make like a conscious decision that you're like, I'm going to buy a ticket, 1 ticket for Dune, please. Right. And then you sit in the thing and you gotta shut up. You don't look at your phone and you watch the movie. And TV is like, what should we watch? I don't know. Let's just put on whatever's on the Netflix machine. And then we're on our phone and we're eating, we're walking in and out of the room. It's just kind of like there and just like for years. Like people will watch like Schitt's Creek over and over and over again. Or like, I mean, I watch 30 Rock all the time. And I don't know. I just think it's important to think about these things that we're just... In the same way that, you know, maybe we should think about like the things that we are eating and putting into our bodies and how they might make us feel. I think we should maybe think about that for TV too. That's just me.
I think I'm fully on board. I think about it this way sometimes. Like, not everything is bad, but everything is imperfect and therefore open to critique. Like, there's an opportunity to critique everything, and that doesn't mean you should always be in that mindset 100% of the time about everything, but like
should be. You should always be.
You should only think negative. What is bad?
Be like me. Don't enjoy anything.
Yeah.
Go to a Billie Eilish concert and think about why she has this montage. And I went to a Billie Eilish concert, and she had this montage of climate change stuff in the middle of it, which I guess was what the song was about, but it just seemed like an aesthetic, and I didn't enjoy it at all because all I could think about was like, what's going on here?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So my goal is to make everyone like me not enjoy anything. That's I'm kidding.
So people should watch Severance.
That's what we were talking about.
It's a great show. I can't wait for season 2. Incredible, like, very tense finale and
last 2 episodes, both just really intense.
The show kind of lulls you into like a sense of security because like it's actually like it's very interesting, it's very well done, like it has these reveals coming at you, but it's not like at least I found it to be kind of almost relaxed in its pacing. Like it didn't feel like it was trying to do all this stuff.
It's a lot of people sitting in offices. Like
it's a lot of talking, walking through a museum.
There are no tits or dragons. Let's put it that way.
It's so, and then you get to the last 2 episodes and it's like, we're really going to ramp things up. We're going to have a finale that's just like, white knuckle the whole time. Like, and so yeah, I'm very much looking forward to season 2.
And the writer said that he's got ideas for, I think, 80 more seasons.
Yeah.
I think he might be exaggerating, but
I feel like that's a bad idea. But if it gets to season 80, I would love to see what that looks like.
It'd be wild if Severance was the longest running scripted TV show of all time.
Yeah.
Finally passes It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like,
Yeah, what'll be the shows that we look back on and like on our deathbeds and we're like, man, I really did not expect that to be the show that just kept going forever.
I feel that way about It's Always Sunny all the time.
Yeah,
I'm like, how is this show? This show feels so niche, but everyone seems to love it. So, anyways, what are you working on nowadays, Thomas? What's your next video gonna be?
Oh, I'm finishing up one right now about how Martin Scorsese told me I was wrong.
The gall.
Not me personally. He called me up. He said, "I seen your video. It's
what would
terrible."
you do if he did that?
I
Would you quit?
know.
Would you just be like, I'm done. I can't.
I think I'd feel.
It's all downhill from here.
I think I feel vaguely honored. What are you working on these days?
I am finishing up this video on The Problem with Jon Stewart, which is his Apple TV Plus show. We're all Apple TV Plus here this month, I guess. And then that'll be coming out this week. And then I'm going to do an episode about Barry, which is coming back for its third season at the end of the month, which I am excited about. April's going to be nuts for TV next month.
We're on a hell of a TV run right now. Like, I've had shows back to back. Like, I think it started before Euphoria. I don't remember if Euphoria overlapped with Succession, but it was like Succession.
No, it was right back to back. Yeah.
Yeah. Succession, Euphoria, and then Severance started up. Atlanta started up. We got Better Call Saul coming up. We got Barry coming up. I'm pretty sure I'm even missing at least one in there. So
there's a lot of stuff. Yeah. HBO's got another show going on right now called Winning Time, which is about the Lakers, and it's really good.
And I gotta say, all of those shows that are coming out weekly, it's superior. Like,
it's so much better.
Having every week at least one or two shows to look forward to makes life better. Like, it's
better for viewers. It's better for the shows because people get to talk about them. I don't know. I'm glad that we experimented with binging and we decided, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't great for our mental health or enjoyment. And now
Netflix
let's
can
go
have
back.
that one.
Russian Doll's coming back for
Russian
season
Doll's
2.
coming back. I'm really down on Netflix these days. I know we talked about this last time, but like,
we've officially switched off of the Netflix shilling.
Yeah. They're raising their prices again. It's going to be $20 a month now.
What?
Yeah.
Well, my dad's not going to be happy about that.
Yeah. No more Netflix shilling from us.
We're HBO Max only.
Yeah.
Except they're, I don't know, Apple TV Plus. I don't know.
Yeah. This was the first show. I mean, there have been some other good shows from Apple TV. We've talked about Servant. I know you like the
For All
space
Mankind.
one.
The space one, yeah.
Some people really like Ted Lasso. I haven't watched that, so I don't know. Probably.
Ted Lasso is definitely a TV show.
But this was the first show for me where I was like, this is
definitely their
like
best.
the
Severance
Apple
is easily
TV
their best
Plus
show. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't think it's close.
Yeah.
People always get mad when you say it's not close. They're like, I can agree with you that it's better, but come on, it's close. Like, it's a competition. It's like, I don't know why you're so upset about the degrees in which you think this is the best thing. All right. On that note, now that we've rambled on in this outro for a while, check us out on Twitter or on YouTube. You're Thomas Flight. I'm Jackson. Skip Intro YT on Twitter. The YT is for YouTube. I thought it was pretty clever. Anyways, we'll talk to you again soon about probably some of those shows. Maybe we'll talk about Better Call Saul. We do both love Better Call Saul a lot. So
yes, yeah, I'm sure there will be something. Basically, our MO at this point is like, we watch stuff and then every now and then we both freak out and we go, we need to record an emergency podcast to talk about.
We need to find a way to monetize us being excited about the show.
Really,
not even really monetized. Monetize is we need an excuse to talk about it. That's what it is.
Basically, Jackson and I were gonna talk about Severance for 2 hours at some point anyway. We just decided to let you.
Might as well record it and make some content out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see you all the next time we do that.
Emergency pod. They're all emergency pods.